I've noticed over the years that organizations that are trying to build innovation, some of them are more successful than others, and the ones that are the most successful have a lot of structure associated with what they're doing. So here's the 5 things that I think I've reduced this. I've had models, bigger than this, but these are the 5 things that I think are really important to talk about when it comes to structuring innovation: strategy, process, structure, culture, and resources. And I want to explain to you how all these things work through the eyes of an incredible program that's going on in the U.S. right now in New York City. It's Mayor Bloomberg's digital roadmap for the city. And so he brought this to life in 2010. And by the end of 2012, which is just some months ago, it's realized about 75% of its goals. And the aim of this thing was to help New York City run better through the use of digital technologies, and was thought about in a very broad sense. Okay, so I think this is thinking big innovation at its best, and it's probably the best example I know at the moment of how massive amounts of innovation at scale are being driven across a complicated landscape. This is complicated. It's got citizen and business interests in it. It's got new technologies. It's got performance improvement opportunities. And this is how it was, in my mind, how it was all sort of brought together. The first thing that we see is that there is a very strong strategy. So the strategy sets the intent of what the organization wants to do, and this had 5 different pillars to their strategy. Okay, so things like access means connecting high needs individuals through New York City Connected initiatives, and to launching outreach and educational efforts to help increase broadband adoption. In the education pillar, they're trying to bring in much more science, technology, and engineering curriculum to schools. They've also, very, very interesting, they've started an academy for software engineering at the high school level. And so they're trying to develop an educated workforce. They're also trying to push open government, which is a new concept that's happening around. It's certainly in the federal government. There's a big push to do that too. But they've tried to open up New York City data, open up APIs, and they have like 900 data sets that are available for people to work with to be able to build apps with and do other things to make government more efficient. They're cultivating a developer community around that. They're having hackathons, for example. In the engagement pillar, they're trying to expand. I don't know if you guys have read about New York City 311, but it's an incredible story about how they've been driving better service at all the agencies through 311 online. They're doing this through apps and through Twitter and through chat, so making it much more easy for the average citizen to be able to access city government. And they're also pulling together crowdsourcing tools, especially you see these at work in times of emergency in the city. And they're also trying to support industry. So they're making this a big idea in order to support technology startups and bringing them the infrastructure that they need, and to recruit more money and other kind of talent to the city. So here's where you have a clear strategy with these 5 pillars, and underneath each one of these pillars are big initiatives that are organized to help constitute big headway against this strategy. And this is what innovation strategy looks like. And so, when I have a question for you, does your company's innovation strategy look like this? I mean, don't look like this, but does it look clear like this? Is it tangible? Is it communicated to people that are going to be affected by it one way or the other? This is a really important thing to be thinking about. What is your innovation strategy? The next thing I want to talk about is process, because I think that you really can't get very far without having good processes, and I think people can do a lot without some of these other elements, but they can't really do without process. And so clearly in New York City, New York City Digital is making a lot of things happen. Some of this stuff probably looks a lot like traditional business development, but they're also building a lot of things like apps and other kinds of programs. And so it'd be foolish to say everything's done by the same process, but I'm sure there is a process that they go by. And the reason that this is important is that that it defines a shared understanding of how things get done for the many people that are involved. And it tells people where they are. You can say, I'm in the define stage, or we're designing this right now, or we're trying to prototype this right now. And so people kind of know where you are. And then also another reason that process is really important is that it helps you scale and effort so that people can come behind you and understand how you did something and how your organization does something. So every organization has different processes, but I think your processes have to reflect really how you make decisions. In innovation processes, you hear a lot about design thinking, or hear a lot about lean startup these days. But fundamentally, this is about being user-centered oftentimes. It's about getting a lot of ideas together, being able to do synthesis, being able to prototype and co-create with customers a lot of times, refining things, doing things in a very fluid and very in a very fluid manner so that you can do things very, very quickly and not be perfect, because some of these things you can't be perfect, certainly when you get out of the gate. So process is really important in my book. Another thing I think is really important for innovation efforts is structure. Okay, so if you think about this particular effort, and I was pretty surprised when I saw this structure, that New York City Digital was put under the Office of Media and Entertainment, which relates to the Economic Development Group, which makes a lot of sense. But they have a very good structure. It reports in, eventually to the right place. They made the first digital officer, a woman named Rachel Hote, is the New York City, in fact, the nation's first chief digital officer of any city government. And the reason it got put where it is, you don't really know, but I noticed that it's probably around a lot of the same sort of people and resources and frame of mind and perspective that it's going to need going forward. So it may be put there just to kind of nurture it along, and it may want to go someplace else. But where you put your innovation group is always an issue when you're standing up some sort of a capability. And I've seen them organized under R&D, under strategy, under design, under operations, as well as reporting directly into the CEO. And so where the innovation group lands is often a function of how it's expected to operate. And you'll see this in this case for sure, and how it's going to be optimized according to a lot of the models that we've looked at. So the most important thing here, and I think you see this in big letters in this particular thing, is that someone needs to be responsible for innovation, because it's simply too hard to manage innovation otherwise, and you see that certainly here. Another example, or another pillar here is about culture. And so this is one of the most challenging aspects of setting up an innovation effort, is to set a culture of innovation. And if you say this is one of the softest things, but it's one of the hardest things to do. If I look at this initiative, I see these aspects of the culture. It's citizen-centered. It's certainly technology-enabled. It's very forward-thinking in terms of the future and what what the city is going to be needing. There's a lot of risk-taking that's going on here, things that have never been done before, and it's very participatory in terms of the kinds of people that are working on it, and inside and outside of government, and the kind of people that it's going to be impacting. So again, this is one of the hardest things to drive, but I think Mayor Bloomer has done a great job at this. I mean, some of the things that he's done, for example, just drive the culture all around. Like, there's 32 public parks that are getting free Wi-Fi. He's made that through a private commitment with the telecom companies. If you're on the subway, you can get cell service, which is pretty remarkable. They've had all kinds of capital come in, venture capital funding, billions of dollars in venture capital funding. They've increased their social media audience in the city to over 2 million people. And there's startups everywhere. This is a friend of mine just said this. This is really interesting now that you can go, people are just talking, and there's a real buzz in the city. They've instituted about 100 different incubators or co-working spaces. They've got about 1,200 tech companies working there, investment firms, digital companies that are, like digital agencies, that kind of thing. And so no doubt they spend a lot of money on this, but I think leadership has to do everything with building a culture of innovation, and what leadership cares about, how they spend their time, what they support financially, and who they bring to the table with them speaks volumes about the kinds of things that they want to do. And so this is something to be thinking about in deriving a culture of innovation when leadership may say, well, how do we do that? Well, it's really walking the talk, I'd say. The last thing I want to talk about is really resourcing things. And over the last several years, I've seen a lot of CEOs demanding innovation without really understanding what it takes to drive that kind of creativity and change that bring innovation to market. And it's just pretty counterproductive and depressing for a lot of people. So I'll just say this. We just talked a little bit about people. Innovation is a team effort, and you're going to need people to inside and outside of your company to be able to help with that. You need money, just like the things we've talked about, to pay for the people and pay for the things that they need to do in development. You need time. You need time and you need patience to be able to bring new things to market because it takes a while. And then also leverage. Smart companies are they realize they don't have to build everything from scratch, and the best innovators find assets and capabilities to build upon. So the point is here that a lot of people like the idea of innovation, but they don't really necessarily like the idea of change. But you can't have innovation without having change. I'll say one thing, product innovation is much easier than service innovation when it comes to this. When you change a product, oftentimes you just change the manufacturing line or the supply chain or the owner's manual, but when you're trying to change a service, you realize that the organization is the production line, and you have a lot more things to change, like the